What grossed you out so much in a relationship that you just left? Dated a girl for a while, always seemed really well put together. Nice clothes, hair, and makeup. We usually hooked up at my place. Went to her apartment once. The smell when she opened the door should have been enough. There were dirty diapers, overflowing trash cans in every room of the house. There was a super small walkway through the mounds of dirty clothes to the bathroom. And to make it worse, there were used paper plates on top of the mountain of dirty dishes in the sink. She proudly pointed out a moldy dish and said that it was from when she cooked dinner for two of our mutual friends. 3 months prior. Noped the hell out of there. There was a guy in my social circle that I had crazy sexual tension with. Nothing happened for the longest time. Then one day we bumped into each other in the city, had a few drinks, the tension was unbearable, and we went back to his place. An aside, I'd never had that kind of casual S before. I'm the sort of person that needs to be in a relationship, but the chemistry with him was so intense, he was an exception. So we got to his place, tearing off each other's clothes. He lies me down the bed, pulls my panties off, and sees my V for the first time. You want to know what he said? He breathlessly said, "Oh my God, you look like a little girl. You're perfect." What the F? I didn't know what to say except wait, and sort of pushed him away from me. He was confused. I wasn't about to explain. I called a cab home and it was exceptionally awkward. Briefly dated a girl who never cleaned her adult toys. It was something I missed the first few times we were together due to lighting, but once I did, it was all I could do not to retch. I played it off like the batteries had died in it. Afterwards, I took a peek at the rest of her collection and they were all the same, coated in crustiness. It wasn't a missed spot here or there either. It had residue peeling and flaking off in big chunks, looking like the walls of an abandoned house. As far as I could tell, she wasn't an otherwise dirty person either. Her place was well kept and clean, and every time we were together, it was clear she had either just taken a shower or we would take one together as part of our pregame. Then again, I have anosmia and can't smell most things, so maybe she stank to hell and I just couldn't tell. Clean your toys, people. When she doted on my kids as if they were hers and ours, but treated hers like they no longer existed or mattered. Massive, massive red flag. I was so happy to get out of that relationship, but years later, I feel badly for her kids and pray everything turned out well for them. Not me, but my aunt married her abuser and did this. Took their clothes and toys to give to the new kids. My parents tried to take custody but lost. I hate that woman. My ex used to say constantly that she wanted to be inside my skin. It was her way of saying she desired me, but it was weird and off-putting. So I asked her to stop, and she couldn't understand what was so uncomfortable about what she was saying. Pretty soon after that, I went on a week-long work trip, and 3 days into it, she called me and told me the whole time I've been gone, she wanted to cheat on me. Then she asked me if she could see other people while I'm gone. I broke up with her pretty much instantaneously. She was jealous of me spending time with my sister and implied our relationship wasn't normal. I was so grossed out by the implication. Dumped her the next day. My ex flat out accused me of effing my cousin because one day my cousin happened to be in town and we met up and gave each other a huge hug because her and I grew up together and survived some pretty horrific abuse and we were our only support for each other. So we of course bonded deeply because of that connection. And at the time this took place, I had not seen this cousin in over 10 years because she moved to the other side of the country. So we both of course missed each other since we had always been so close, and bonds formed under pressure like that are really strong. My girlfriend pulled me aside and started chewing me out, saying I hugged her too long, at which point I just said, "I'm not having this discussion. Feel free to leave if you don't like it." The next day she accused me, publicly I might add, of effing my cousin because she found my cousin in my bed, completely ignoring the fact that I literally told my girlfriend my cousin was staying with me and that I was giving her my room and I would be sleeping on the couch. I was fuming. It was 2 separate incidents, but long story short, one night she got super drunk at my sister-in-law's house. After spilling a second glass of red wine on my sister-in-law's white carpet, we opted to move her glass further away from the edge of the table. As soon as we left, she screamed, like full-fledged rage, at me for not defending her. The very next time we were together, she got drunk again and accused me of trying to cheat on her. I've never cheated on anyone. And threw her purse at me. I let things calm down and explained to her that I grew up in a house chock full of domestic violence and that was an absolute line in the sand. And for that reason, I was out. We were in one of many fights and I told him I needed space. So we hadn't talked in maybe a day. I got a text from a random number saying it was his sister and that he was in the hospital after a bad work accident. I asked which hospital, knowing that it is him texting me using a number app, lying about being injured, but you never know. Maybe it's real. She tells me the name of the hospital and then sends me a picture of just his legs, which are bruised, but they look like how his legs have always looked. And then she says this is the last picture they took of him before he was life-flighted to the hospital. She said he had severe head trauma, a cracked skull, and his back was likely broken in several places. So I called the hospital and asked if they had any patients by his name. They said no. I asked if anyone was life-flighted in the last few hours. They said no. I blocked the number and went to sleep. A few days later, I got a text from another random number claiming to be his brother. He sent me a selfie of him in a hospital gown in an exam room at a doctor's office. He looked totally normal, no cracked skull or broken back. And it was cute because the room was ocean themed with crabs and fish on the walls. Anyway, the text said he was in the ICU, the crab room, and he had just woken up from a coma. Again, I asked which hospital, and the brother refuses to tell me, saying he'll be released within the hour, so there's no point in a visit. I know it makes me sound like a bad person for not believing him, but this man lied to me on several occasions. Told me he'd been shot, stabbed, poisoned. Also, his wife passed away, and he told me two very different stories about how she died, which led me to believe he might have had something to do with it. So many red flags, and my mentally ill self was naive and lonely at that time in my life. Granted, this was a breaking point for me, and I dove headfirst into therapy and never looked back. He showed me, with excitement, a box of things he'd been collecting from me without my knowledge. This included strands of my hair taped up neatly, bobby pins and hairpins I had in from prom, my fingerprints and saliva sample that he took out of the trash from our forensics class experiments. He thought this was a romantic gesture or something, but it just made me really realize how creepy and obsessive he is. He was also very controlling and got jealous/mad at me for hanging out with my sister or spending time on my laptop or with my dog. And he also admitted to me that he stalked my Facebook interests to pretend he knew and liked what I liked, researching the games I played and the music I listened to so he could bring it up in conversation. Total psycho. I showered at his place after staying over and I asked for a towel. He gave me one which had literal skin flakes on it. I asked for a clean one. He asked what I meant. He didn't realize that you need to wash towels because they just have water on them, so they clean themselves. My ex would threaten suicide anytime things got tough in our relationship. Grossed me out enough that I just called it a day eventually. Cue the desperate calls hours later from the apparent overdose. She's still alive and kicking somewhere though. My ex pretended to have cancer right after I got a call that my great-grandmother had passed, but didn't want me to know because I'd worry too much. Instead, he told the two people in our friend group who had a bad habit of oversharing, he knew they did this, and then got mad at me a few hours later when I found out. No appointments, I wasn't allowed to talk to his mom's siblings, no new medications, nothing. And then one day it was, I never said I had cancer. What the F are you talking about? Found out girlfriend had several fake social media accounts she'd used to bully strangers and harass women she knew, including my ex-wife. Instant dump. The first night I slept at my ex's apartment, I woke up in the middle of the night to an extremely loud scraping noise. It was inside my ear. A roach had crawled into my ear and was scraping against my eardrums with its legs, antennas, whatever. It was the most awful feeling I've ever experienced. I used tweezers to try to get it out, and when I pulled them out after a few times, only half of the roach came out. I had to go to the ER to get the rest out and get antibiotics. I had a horrible ear infection for a couple of weeks. The worst part was her saying, it happens to my son all the time. Like, what the F? Found out she had wrappers and trash under her bed. Clean your effing house! It has literally haunted me and given me PTSD. When I'm sleeping, if I hear the slightest noise, I jump up and swat uncontrollably around my head and ears. My wife was shocked at the first time I did it when we were dating, but since I told her, she fully understands. I went away with my ex and saw his toothbrush for the first time. It had black mold growing on it, and the bristles were so flat, the toothbrush had a middle parting. I had a conversation with him about hygiene and told him to get a new toothbrush, but when I stayed at his house 2 weeks later, the cursed toothbrush was still there, so I ended it. We went to a restaurant, nothing fancy. She treated the server like absolute as though she was royalty and the server was the help. Yeah, that was it for me. I suddenly had zero interest in her. The kicker was, she was a waitress. Shit you not. I was on a girls' trip I booked months in advance, a festival. He showed up there and brought one of the other boyfriends with him. I hated it, but couldn't do anything but just accept his arrival. Got into a fight with the girls. He did not involve them either with this surprise. Later on, he kept doing this. Internship abroad. He shows up, forcing my roommate to leave. Dinner, one-on-one with my dad. He shows up. I moved out because I needed space. He booked a trip we cannot cancel. Broke up with him afterwards. He kept showing up at my hometown and even worked. It has been 2 years, and he texted me congratulations when I got married last year. But all I can feel is anxiety about his control issues. She was almost perfect for the first year that we dated, to the point where I considered marriage with her. Our leases were up around the same time, so we decided to move in together. Not even a month into us living together, she turns into a completely different person. She started instigating fights over very small things, blowing things out of proportion, accusing me of cheating when I'd have to work late. She'd pack her things to leave, but would never actually leave, just like the fight of me trying to talk talk her down. One day, we were at a movie store in the mall together, and I was looking at the back of a movie at the description. She accused me of oogling over the actress that was on the movie case, stormed out of the movie store, left the mall, left me there with no ride home, and didn't answer her phone. I got the fuck out of there as soon as I could. After I left, she texted me paragraphs of apologies, begging me to take her back. She then started stalking me at work and coming to my friend's house that I was staying at. Ended up getting a restraining order against her. I was dating a girl when I was younger. She seemed nice, and she had 2 small cats. One weekend, I went to visit her, and the cats weren't there. I asked her where they were, and she told me they had gotten annoying. And so she put them in the car and drove to an abandoned bush area and left them. I faked an emergency at home. We lived about a 2-hour drive apart, left, and broke up with her when I got home. Junior year in high school, I got a girlfriend for the first time. She was popular, beautiful, and out of my league. She took my virginity, and I was crazy about her. The more I got to know her on a personal level, the more I believed that she wasn't that great of a person. Her family was beyond obnoxious, but a small price to pay for a horny teenager. About 6 to 7 months into the relationship, I had dinner with her family at their house. She insisted her older brother tell me this hilarious story. He goes on about how after gym class one day, he was left alone with a mentally handicapped student. He tied him up with a volleyball net and left him stranded in the gymnasium screaming. The entire family was howling and laughing listening to this. I broke up with her a couple days later. Went on a few dates with a guy, was on a FaceTime call with him cooking, and asked him to show me his skills and what he was making. Flips the camera to show raw chicken just sitting in the sink next to dirty dishes as he seasoned it. My brain checked out after that one. Dated a guy who said even the smell of mint would make him gag. Mint anything. Ice cream, gum, toothpaste. So yeah, he didn't brush his teeth. Wouldn't hear a bar of it when I said there were non-mint toothpaste on the market. I realized after over 6 months together that he was just generally unhygienic and had a specific hang-up about brushing teeth. He told me he had memories of his mother holding him down to forcefully brush his teeth as a child because he hates mint so much. But I have to wonder if it was always about the mint or actually the fact that the taste of mint was the most tangible part of that childhood trauma. He convinced me to stay on Skype while I was sleeping, and he'd literally talk to me if I moved an inch, thinking I was waking up. What finally got me to stop was when I caught him saying to me in my sleepy days was that if he was next to me in real life, he'd stick his D in me while I'm sleeping and put much emphasis into doing so without my consent because you can't say no. And ride me all night long. I finally got the courage to ghost him after hearing that. She was so rude to my friends. We went out to dinner with him and she constantly made fun of one's height, something he's clearly been insecure about. I told her to chill, and then she said, my hairline is far back, but no one notices because I'm tall. I broke up with her the next morning. I felt so bad for my friends, but they're still in my life, thankfully. I'd gotten to the point in the relationship where he didn't mind me in the bathroom while he used it. He took a shit and wiped once. Didn't even look at the toilet paper. Then started pulling his pants up. I immediately asked what the F he was doing and how the F he thought one little wipe was going to do a damn thing. And he was like, I've never needed more than one. Look. Then wiped again, probably expecting nothing to be there. There was a lot there. I don't know. I guess the idea of him just carrying on with his day with shit regularly caked up his ass painted him in a different light for me. Wasn't ever able to reignite the attraction. Probably should have been the person-sized pile of garbage in his room that made me reconsider, but I had further limits than most, I suppose. At a party with some of my closest friends and a lot of their mutual friends, one of our friends who had recently been diagnosed with cancer was sharing some of his experience with chemo. My then girlfriend interrupted him by saying, "Oh, come on. It's not that big a deal. We all probably have cancer. Moles are usually cancerous. Look, I probably had cancer in all these places on my arms where I had moles removed." There were a lot of other issues that led to it, but I broke up with her a few days later. I was just so appalled by her lack of self-awareness. These were my friends who I had known for a decade, and she'd only known them for about a year, and we were in a small group of maybe 9 people. Most of whom she hadn't even met before. It disgusted me, and I couldn't spend the rest of my night near her. Ended it within the week. About 10 years ago, I got involved with a girl who, 2 weeks after we started to date, presented me with an itinerary of the rest of our lives. When we were supposed to get married, where she wanted the wedding to happen, how much it should cost, how many kids she wanted to have, and when she wanted to have each one. Her plan was to be a stay-at-home mom while I worked full-time, but sure, we were supposed to buy our first house and the expectation that we upgrade every 5 years, how my career should progress, including being in management by 30 and in a C-suite role by 45, how much I was expected to make to support her and the kids, when I was supposed to retire, etc. Suffice to say, we didn't make it to 3 weeks. I did buy my first house before her schedule said I should though, so at least I got that going for me.